Okay, good morning everybody. Thank you for joining us. So this is our first One Medical Group breakfast webinar in a series of webinars. So every 3 weeks we're going to be joined by an expert panel from our own experts across One Medical Group and guest speakers to discuss and debate a different topic every webinar. We hope to be able to give you some practical tips and tools that you can take away and use with your own teams, and we hope that from the discussion that we have that you'll be able to take away some inspiration. The discussions that we're going to have are around a taster of how we've grown as a primary care provider at scale. So some of you may know One Medical Group, having worked with previously. We to some of you. So we have 5 divisions that focus around health and well-being, digital services and transformation, consultancy, property and care delivery. We're based in Yorkshire, but we have services across the country. And I'm speaking to you today from our One Wellness Centre in Harrogate, which is a super venue for today's topic. If you want any information after the webinar or you want to get in touch, you can email us at webinars@onemedicalgroup.co.uk and we'll be in touch after the webinar and share with you a copy of today's recording along with any publications or documents that we talk about and reference during our conversation. I'm delighted to welcome our panel today. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So thank you for taking the time to join us. Dr. Will Dawson, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Will. So I'm the Chief Executive of One Medical Group and a GP by background. I've been working with the company for about 6.5 years and have been part of the senior leadership team for 3.5 years. And I'm also the director level champion of wellbeing across the company and as part of the development of our corporate wellbeing strategy. So wellbeing is hugely important to me. I think hugely important from a company level, but also on a personal level, having suffered very early on in my medical career with burnout. I think it's something that has been long ignored in the NHS and something that we've been working really hard to shine a light on over the last 2 years.
That's great. Thanks very much, Will. George Moxon, over to you.
Hi all, so my name is George Moxon and I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Lead here at One Medical Group. So I have quite a varied background. I have experience within patient-facing roles, but also then a varied HR background as well. My passion for health and wellbeing came from working within a patient-facing role and understanding the pressures on staff doing that role or being within that position. So I have experience of working previously within a specialist mental health and learning disability trust, where health and wellbeing was quite high on the agenda as well, due to obviously the nature of the role that the staff perform there, and also more recently within One Medical Group supporting and working in line with our wellbeing strategy, but also supporting and being part of the COVID coordination team, which I'll go into in a bit more detail later on.
That's great. Thanks, George. And last but not least, Megan Brooks.
Hi, so my name is Megan Brooks and I am the trainer at One Wellness, so you'll even be able to see the gym behind me. And I lead classes here for the general public, for our clients, but also I'm a trainer going into practices, leading wellbeing sessions and movement sessions for all the internal staff at One Medical Group. So I've been a personal trainer and yoga teacher for about 6 years now, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I love just helping people discover what they enjoy about movement and wellbeing.
That's great. Thanks, Megan, and thanks, George and Will, for joining us. So this week's topic, as we get started, is around staff and corporate wellbeing and around the technology and the methodology to create physically and mentally strong teams and a workforce across primary care. And some recent statistics that have been quoted in articles, just to do a little bit of scene setting. So 70% of organisations are concerned about the health and well-being of their employees, and that's certainly been exacerbated over the last 4 or 5 months now since the start of the COVID pandemic. Just 30% of employees feel resilient. That was a recent survey by the CIPD, and it's shown that employees with poor resilience have a 55% lower engagement rate at work. So we know it's in our interest as primary care providers to try and focus on wellbeing and the health and wellbeing of our staff today before it becomes tomorrow's problem. And I know George, from a human resources and a recruitment and retention point of view, will echo that in some of his comments as we go through today's discussions. So our first question for our panel. So looking back on 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic, what have we learned as primary care providers about the importance of staff wellbeing? So Will, I'm going to come to you first of all.
No, I think the question just sort of some of the things you've just said. I think wellbeing has always been important and been incredibly important. I think it's been we've long ignored it, particularly in the NHS and particularly in primary care, and replaced the word resilience with simply being able to cope with the absence of good wellbeing. I think that problem, tomorrow's problem, has become today's problem with COVID. We've seen over the last 12 months articles from the BMA and GMC around the importance of wellbeing, and actually wellbeing now figures quite prominently in the NHS People Plan. However, I think the challenge has been having to, for many, having to make wellbeing a priority when it hasn't been before during a pandemic and crisis. And I think for us as a company, we started our journey of looking at how we could improve the wellbeing and resilience and support our teams 2 years ago. And that's been a journey which has been full of learning and a lot of change, and we've had to adapt, and not everything works. And so I think whilst it is really important, I think it's a lesson for us all to say, actually, wellbeing is important not just when there's a crisis, it's important before the crisis, because actually that helps with staff wellbeing. I think what COVID is, one of the things around COVID is it's made us all put it at the top of our agenda and really think about, well, how are we supporting not just our patients, but how do we actually look after ourselves and our workforce. And we've done a huge amount of work to make sure we protect our workforce physically, but also make sure that they can cope from the other aspects of wellbeing in what's been a really difficult time. So I think we've learned that actually there's no, you have to act, you have to prepare for and help people be resilient by improving their well-being, even at the times when it may not be a priority, because when it is a priority, you may find actually that you're too late, you haven't had that preparation.
Thanks, Will. And George, you were heavily involved in the COVID coordination team, so leading that health and wellbeing work kind of operationally across the organisation. So could you share with us some of your insights and experience?
Yeah, and I just want to touch on, Caroline, as well, how important, as you've all said, it is, and how COVID has shone a light on the impact of health and wellbeing in an organisation. You know, across the NHS, 17.7 million days have been lost, which is the highest across the whole economy. So it is something we do need to work on now. Within the group, obviously, COVID did highlight it even more. And so we set up the COVID coordination team, which was support for all our workforce across all our divisions and NHS services, to not just offer sort of operational clinical support, but to offer that workforce development and workforce health and wellbeing support. So for us, it was vital that we maintained relevant and up-to-date communication and timely communication, so that staff understood, you know, what was happening, what support was available. And that is key, staff understanding what support is available to them at that time, especially going through a pandemic as we have been going through. And I think, you know, looking back from the survey that we did around the COVID pandemic and the support that we offered, 100% of our staff came back and said they know what support is available, and that's due to how we kept in contact and how we made sort of communication flow right from the top to the bottom and back and forwards, vice versa. It's helped us really great in terms of how we recruit and how we retain workforce, and also for us, it's helped sort of guide our actions now moving forwards alongside our wellbeing strategy that Will has mentioned and has championed across the directors and across the organisation. So for us, we understand the importance, and we were always working on it before the pandemic, but again, it has just highlighted the whole remit of health and wellbeing and how we can support employees.
And I think just to add to that, George, I know kind of there's a lot of talk at the moment around modern day employers needing to embrace things like flexible working as part of a health and wellbeing offering. And I know you did a lot of work with our teams in our general practices and our walk-in centres and urgent care centres, as well as our central support team, to look at how flexibility can be offered, because I think a lot of providers or employers will jump to the fact that that means remote working or working from home, but flexibility means different things to different people. So going back to the that survey that you did, really understanding and asking people what matters to them and what means the most to them was really critical in some of the work that you did. Will, do you just want to come in there?
Yeah, no, and I think that's been really important to engage with our workforce. I'd be slightly controversial as a GP, but I think some of that has been convincing people that actually wellbeing is important. I think there is certainly from my experience working in the NHS and in primary care particularly, there is very much a warrior spirit attitude of what resilience means to a lot of us as clinicians, and almost the admission of being allowed to have good well-being is a sign of a sort of a weakness, or not being as good as the generation before. And I think there's a real attitude change that we've had to work on, and look at ourselves as saying, actually, that it's okay to say, actually, the way we've been working for quite a long time in general practice and in healthcare generally isn't okay and isn't good for us. And actually saying it's not okay and it's not good for us is better than sort of perpetuating this. You need to kind of keep up, and you need to be able to kind of run on empty, and you need to be able to work 80-hour weeks because that's the job. And part of that, and there's a real careful balance there, because whilst we want to create a resilient and high quality workforce and teams, we also want our teams to be happy, and we want people to enjoy their jobs. We want people to love what they do and have good well-being, and that's fundamentally on a personal level. But we also know that good well-being means that doctors make better decisions and care better for patients, and there's better experience for patients, and they're actually safer. The patient safety events go down with a workforce that has better well-being, and that's on top of, as George describes, the wider kind of benefits that you would see from the other industries. There's a real fundamental improvement to patient care.
Thanks, Will. And Megan, I want to turn to you, because the work that you were doing pre-COVID looked very different, almost overnight, and just with a focus on technology and how you started to provide services, they changed. So do you want to tell us a little bit around kind of how your work shifted during COVID and how you've been supporting teams?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as you say, it literally changed overnight. As soon as face-to-face offering of fitness and well-being was put on hold, it was kind of shifting us into a mindset of, okay, so how can we help people in lockdown and from their homes or from their working from home situations? How can we bring that kind of connectivity back? So we built an online platform on Facebook called the One Wellness Hub, so the One Wellness online community, and it really kind of blossomed from there. It was a platform from which that we could invite people to take part in classes from the comfort of their own home, and sharing resources that are valuable to people that will help them to incorporate well-being into their own life. So I think that was a huge kind of step that we took as a company, to make sure that we were accessible to everybody, and just connecting people in that way. So, and that also gave us the platform to kind of online classes, so leading yoga and wellbeing sessions through Zoom and through like video recordings, just so that people still had that accessibility, which was really great.
And that's, having taken part in those, it was great fun. So we had everyone from our chairperson through to managers and site teams and receptionists, dialing in at 8 o'clock in the morning to take part in virtual Zoom sessions of yoga or Pilates. Many of those were led by Megan. So yeah, great work. And you can all as well, if you want to have a look, go onto Facebook and visit the One Wellness community hub. It's open for people to join, and there's some free content there that you can access as well, and have a look at some of Megan's classes. So panel, moving on to our second question. How can we support our workforce in becoming physically and mentally stronger? And do we feel that this is our responsibility to do so as a modern day employer? So Will, I'm going to come to you again first.
So I think this is there's probably no easy answer to this, no kind of yes or no. I think it's absolutely our responsibility as leaders of either our teams or our companies or as individuals to ensure that they're in the workspace to manage people's well-being. I think the ownership is mixed. I don't think we can dictate to people how they manage their well-being, because well-being is such a personal thing and means things to many different people. But I think then that's a responsibility to look to create an environment and actually engage with the workforce or with your team to say, well, what is important to us, what means something, and what will make a measurable difference. We've talked a lot, and actually when we first started setting agendas on well-being, and we've done some work with external kind of companies and members, some work within the DH as well, around where well-being actions, well-being initiatives aren't working and have failed because actually they're not meaningful to the people that they're meant to be benefiting. And that's not because people don't care, but the risk is without actually engaging with the workforce and taking that responsibility to say, this is part of our culture, this is what we want to achieve, this is what we want for you, or it feels like rhetoric, it feels unnecessary, it feels there's another benefit that people don't use or don't believe in. So I think that as a leader of the company for us, and I think our responsibility as individuals is to make it important collectively, make well-being important, not just for our patients, because we do that every day, but make it important for each other and actually stand up and say the way that we're behaving isn't helping each other and actually not reinforcing it. So it's an unhealthy behaviour that the responsibility is to try and to change. I think asking people to change or creating that environment is really important. However, everyone has to have a responsibility for that, because there'll always be reasons for people not to want to tackle certain aspects of their well-being, and some things will matter more to others than they will to you. So I think it is a difficult one, as I say. I think, but I absolutely think we have a responsibility to put it on the agenda and make it something that matters, and not just say well-being or we talk a lot about the word, but actually start making practical changes and lead that from the top as well, because actually if we're not as seniors within our companies taking that on board and driving that culture through, then no one else will, because it won't be an environment that allows for well-being. So I think there's certainly a responsibility there, but I think it's a responsibility for everyone, and our responsibility is to lead that movement and that change.
And I think a lot of what you said, Will, is covered off really well in the NHS People Plan that we saw published earlier on this year, and I'm sure George is probably going to come on to this as well, but it talks around giving people the permission to switch off. And I think sometimes as leaders, we're probably the worst at that. Do we all go home at the end of our day, put our phone and laptops away, and do we encourage our teams to do the same? Or is there that constant expectation to be on emails and watching things? And there is certainly a balance to be had, but the People Plan is really encouraging organisations to have those conversations and to start to talk openly around how we can create that focus on health and well-being, both inside and outside core working hours as employers. So George, I'm going to come across to you now. So how can we support our workforce in becoming physically and mentally stronger, and is it our responsibility?
So, I mean, I am going to partially agree, and yes, it is our responsibility as an employer. And there is some dual responsibility. The person themselves has to be aware of their own well-being and be engaged with to want to take part and to improve their own sort of mental health or physical health, their own overall well-being. As you said, the NHS People Plan is pushing this agenda forwards as well. So as an employer, I think there is more responsibility on us now to ensure that we are pushing that agenda as well, and making sure that health and wellbeing is key and has that board level assurance that the work is being done. I think for me, in terms of how we can support our workforce, from a range of things that we've done, have a look at sort of holistic support, like the overall wellbeing. It's not just physical and mental wellbeing, but there's also other aspects to it. The connection with other people, financial wellbeing. So it's around having to think about what your staff need. Think about that very closely, because it's not one size fits all. So it's about assessing what the staff needs, like Will said, in terms of looking at maybe a quick survey to understand any key themes or trends that are happening. Some of the stuff we have done is wellbeing retreats. So that was a 2-day for staff to come out of their work and spend a couple of days getting to know their own health and wellbeing, spending time looking at resilience, learning about diet and nutrition, as well as physical wellbeing as well. So it was an overall very important view of health and wellbeing through sort of their own lens as well, so that they learn more about it themselves, which then in turn they go back to their services feeling refreshed and know what they want to do to improve themselves. And also we have done things such as lunch and learn sessions, which has been an hour over lunch with a topic expert, such as on resilience and mental health. Really just a quick brief session for staff to log on to in their own time, to really again understand a little bit more about it and what takeaways they can take from that to again improve their own wellbeing by maybe taking some time out, mindfulness, learning some key techniques. We have done other quick sort of sessions as well, such as a 30-day wellbeing challenge, which was based on the 5 ways to wellbeing, looking again at all aspects of wellbeing and just quick daily challenges that were sent out from the HR team to all the organisation, and just getting staff feedback on how they've done and how they found it. So it is about, again, going back to that communication and engaging with the staff so that they learn about wellbeing as well as taking part in initiatives and activities.
That's great. Will, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just really quickly, and I think George talks a lot around what we've done to educate and empower people, and I think that's really important, and certainly that's where technology's played a big role. So some of the apps around mental health or personal training apps that we promoted, and we've also promoted an internally developed health and wellbeing tracker to help people kind of keep a view of that, because it's not, again, our responsibility is to help educate and empower. I think it's really important to say this isn't about giving everyone what they want or making people happy all the time, because we're a business and there needs to be, we need to take that into account. So it's not around sort of, I think so often there's a reflection that people's well-being either doesn't matter or doesn't mean anything, or it's seen as being a sort of a soft way out of doing your job, and it's not around that. It's around giving people the tools to be able to manage their own well-being, and then be able to take responsibility of that.
As well, and I just to echo some of the comments made there as well. So if you're looking to access some of the resources, if you haven't been to the NHS Employers website, I would really encourage you to do so. They offer a free diagnostic tool that you can download, and it's a yes or no tick sheet that you can do as a practice or as a primary care network. It's a really helpful tool just to walk through step by step some recommendations that assess what you have in place and what you could put in place. And again, it links back to George and Will's earlier comments around, it's not just around physical activity, it's around financial support, access for someone to talk to in times of need or crisis, the connectivity that Megan talked about earlier. So there's lots of apps out there as well, as Will was saying. So the NHS app website has plenty of apps available, but in terms of promoting apps within your workforce as well, I think often we're very good at promoting health and wellbeing solutions for patients, and we're less good at doing that for our own teams and workforces. So think about what you're promoting with your patients that you could also flip to being an offer internally for your own teams. Megan, I want to come to you. Do you think it's our responsibility as an employer to help people in becoming mentally and physically stronger?
So I think there is, I mean, I quite agree with what both Will and George have said. There's a certain level of responsibility where I believe that if your company is providing these resources and encouraging and, as Will said, empowering people to know that they can prioritize their health and well-being whilst at work, and it's accommodated and it's encouraged, I think you're fitting that responsibility. But I completely agree. It's the onus onto obviously the individual. They find what well-being and health means to them, so it's how they prioritize it, and it's it's finding what they enjoy, what fits in well with their own individual lifestyles. So I think, yeah, there's a certain amount of responsibility, but it's it's fitting to kind of know that you're offering those places to go, that support, and that you actively encourage it from your members of staff and your kind of employees. And I think it comes down to, as well, the biggest responsibility is to lead by example. It kind of that fits into all walks of life. But if you are seen prioritizing and making sure that you have got a good work-life balance, that's then going to filter down to those within the company, and that's going to encourage them to do the same. So I think it's just if you've got that embedded in your culture, then that is one of the most valuable things, and that's going to allow your staff to really know that their well-being is being prioritized within the company as well.
I'm going to stick with you, Megan, because some of the things that you've just been talking about come on to our last question, which is, panellists, you've each got 60 seconds to give me your top tips and quick wins for practices or primary care networks who might be looking to really invest in the health and well-being of their staff. And particularly, Megan, I want to come to you around, the free or the less expensive ways that we can impact, because budgets and financial responsibilities aside, there are some things that we can do that don't cost the earth that will promote health and well-being with our teams. So if I can come to you for your top tips and quick wins.
Yeah, of course. So I think it's definitely encouraging people to break up their day. So whatever their daily kind of responsibilities and duties look like, it's encouraging them to take time, taking their breaks, and encouraging team members to maybe go for a walk if the weather's reasonable. Not wanting people to get soaked on the lunch break, but just getting up and talking to one another, which encourages movement but also connectivity. So you're encouraging people to go and connect with someone who is in a separate office, or just a way to kind of get out of the chair and to get moving. And certainly just encouraging people to, there's all sorts of different ways to get moving. It doesn't have to be an exercise or a gym. It can be, going out for a walk as a team after a working shift or after a working day, and it could be once a month, but that promotes something as a team as well, which is really great. But yeah, it's certainly so important that breaks are taken and you're incorporating movement, and then also partnering up with local studios, and it could be a dance class, it could be movement or a gym, anything that gauge the interest of your workforce, but find a place that offers that and see if they're willing to partner up. It could be a discount, it could be free classes, to support the NHS or support the medical practices. But there's so much out there that is available that just needs asking for. So that's always a good idea for a practice manager, just to see what's local.
That's great. Thanks, Megan. Yeah. That's brilliant. Okay, George and Will. So Will, I'm going to come to you. You've got 60 seconds. Give us your top tips and quick wins.
So I think as a top tips is to make it important. So set yourself a plan, lead it from the top. So someone who is a senior, champion it and make it meaningful to your staff. Keep it simple. So look to see how you can put small bits of well-being into normal work. Don't try and change the way we work, but let's try and add normal life. So even if that's a coffee break, a connection point. And remember, well-being is not all around exercise. So we follow a lot of our strategies based on the 5 ways to well-being. that cover off a lot of, even if it's around encouraging people to go and do something outside of work, which gives them something back. So, but I think the biggest thing is, if you're serious, make it a part of a culture and lead it as such, and make it an expectation of everybody.
Thanks, Will. That's great. George, over to you.
Yeah, so my top tip I would say is make it relevant to your teams. So whether that's a quick survey or engaging through team meetings, one-to-ones with your staff, make sure that you understand what they're looking for and what they feel they may need. It doesn't have to cost anything or cost the earth. Have a look at what the NHS already offers and what external sources or apps are available. You know, throughout the pandemic, there were apps offering free trials to NHS staff for 3 to 6 months. So do have a look and see what is available. And then again, have a look at what short initiatives you can take place in line with sort of the national calendar events available on NHS employers. So, for example, if you have a look on there, there's National Walking Month, you can do a walking challenge. You can get involved in the Stoptober. There's different things that you can sort of put into your organisation and launch it as a wellbeing challenge, but overall you need to launch it slowly and importantly to make sure that the team take it on board.
That's great. Thanks, George. And thank you to all of our panellists for sharing their experience and their insights. If you want any more information, don't forget you can get in contact with us by emailing webinars@onemedicalgroup.co.uk. And don't forget to sign up to our next breakfast webinar, which is in 3 weeks' time on the 30th of September. We're really excited. So we're going to be joined by Bev Taylor, who is the Operations Director at the National Academy of Social Prescribing and also holds a senior role in NHS England. And we'll be discussing social prescribing and the wider determinants of health. A really hot topic for primary care networks as we start to look at how we really embed and build on the social prescribing link worker roles that many PCNs adopted in the first year. So we hope you can join us. Any feedback that you can give us after the event would be very welcome to take on board and will help us to shape future events. I hope today's been useful and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much.